This is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. Let's get to Constitution of the United States, the laws of nature. You say, what's this got to do with church? I know some of you are asking that. I can almost hear it. Maybe I'm just thinking it. But the truth is, Jesus Christ is Lord of his creation and everything that happens in it. And when I say Lord, I mean sovereign Lord. Government is his business. Nobody else's. He's in charge. War is his business. Nobody else's. He's in charge. Politics is his business. Nobody else. He's in charge. Your family and my family, that's his business. Nobody else. He's in charge. If that isn't true, the Bible is a joke. Well, the Bible's not a joke. It's the most solid evidence of ancient literature by a veritable embarrassment of evidentiary riches. Anybody that would deny that is a buffoon. I don't want to say anybody is a buffoon and call them by name. I just say hypothetically speaking. That's right. Jesus Christ is the Lord. He's involved, friends. We're not deists. Our founders were not deists either. They believed that the Godhead is involved in their lives and their affairs. Either he's Lord of all, as the Reformers said, or he's Lord of nothing. Either Jesus Christ is a lunatic, a liar, or he is Lord of all. A lot of people say he's a lunatic or a liar. I mean, a man stand up and say, just a man, like you're looking at him, he looks like a man. He stands up and says, with uncanny authority, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except he come through me. And you wonder why they killed him? He's either a lunatic, a liar, or he is Lord of all creation. I'm fully convinced, for what it's worth. I'm just here to give testimony of what I've discovered and what I've inferred. That's my job, by the way. That's your job too. Just give testimony. That means you have to have first-hand experience with the thing. You have to thought it through yourself, seen it with your own eyes, heard it with your own ears, touched it with your own fingers, felt it in your own guts, smelt it with your own nose. That's what we call a witness. I'm just telling you what I've seen, heard, and felt. I told you that story about that case I was in one time. And I was standing outside the courtroom in a little county there, and a man comes to me and said, well, they tell me you're a lawyer and you can help me. I said, I don't know. What do you want me to do? He said, I want you to go to court here with me. I only got 15 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that. I want you to go in court with me and defend my case. I said, well, what's it about? He said, I'll give you $125. $125? I was hurting in those days. I'd snatch $125 for an hour's worth of doing something. Actually, it was worth a lot more than that. But I should have charged him a minimum of $1,000. That used to be the policy. Won't take a case for less than $1,000. Well, that came to be the policy. But at that time, I was raising 7 or 8 children. I forget. Let's see. Oh, no, it was 8 at that time. And I'd snatch it. Why did I do those things? Well, because we were starving, I should say. The children, funny creatures. They just assume you're going to feed them 3 times a day or maybe more. Give them a warm place to sleep. They assume those things. Darndest thing. Well, I said, okay, well, tell me quick. Tell me what it's about. He told me. He said, I'm the only witness. I'm going to get on the witness stand, and these people are renting property from me, and they're trashing it and tearing it up, and I can't get them out, and I don't know how to get them out. I said, well, how bad is it? He said, well, you get me on the witness stand, and I'll tell you. Oh, okay. I didn't have time to buff up on anything. He climbed up on the witness stand, and the judge put him under oath. And I said, well, so-and-so rented this property from you, and you're trying to get them out. Yeah. So had you visited the property? He said, yeah. I said, when's the last time you visited it? He told me, well, on that day, I'm direct examination. No, direct examination, all you got to do is remember 6 things. 6, and they're easy to remember. And that's the 6 kind of questions you can ask on direct examination. The 6 kind of questions you can ask on direct examination, if you stay within these parameters, you won't make a fool of yourself, and you'll find out what you need to know. Here it is. I'll put it in a nutshell, everything they're supposed to teach you in law school. Just ask questions that tell you what, how, why, when, where, and who. They didn't teach me that in law school. I found out later. You know how I found out how to do that? By making a darn fool of myself trying to cross-examine people. That's how you do it. Objection, Your Honor. Leading question, all that kind of stuff, you know. Oh, okay, well, I'll try something else. You just keep trying, see. Isn't it funny they don't teach you anything in law school but just a whole lot of, well, they teach you a lot of law, but our common law is a practical thing. It's not about theory. It's not about logic. It's not about reason. Our common law, no, the law of the city that governs the rest of the world is about that. Our common law is about fact. Period. The rest of it, all the logic, that'll take care of itself. Horses are born to run. Birds are born to fly. Beasts of prey are born to ferocity. Hounds are born to hunt. Can't stop them. Roosters are born to fight. You can't stop them either. You beat a mud hole in a rooster. Turn around and beat it dry. He'd get up and fight with you again. That's the way they are. That's the way God made the critter. All that's true about horses, hounds, beasts of prey. But man is born to think. And he does think. He does reason. Didn't have to take a course on logic by a logician. No, logicians are just like magicians. They're logic, as Luther said, is a whore. She'll do anything you pay her to do. That's fact. Oh, it's an important tool. It's properly used. But logic's not what our common law is about. The life of our common law, even Justice Holmes, a pagan that he was, the U.S. Supreme Court said our common law is not about logic. It's about experience. Well, why did he say that? He wrote a book on our common law the book's called The Common Law. That's the only thing he said in the book that really was worthwhile. He said, our common law is about experience. Well, what does that mean? I don't know why he didn't say it the easy way. He was too young when he wrote the book, I suppose. Our common law is about experience. That means it's about first-hand knowledge, see, which is what? Evidence, testimony. So I got this guy on the witness stand. And I got what, how, why, when, where, who, of course. The only thing, if he's a witness, he can only tell about facts that he personally has gathered through his 5 senses and his guts, his feelings. So he said, yeah, I walked up to the trailer that he had rented, a 60-foot trailer. I walked up to the trailer and I said, well, what'd you do? I said, well, what did you see? He said, I saw the windows open, trash piled up to the windows, every window of the trailer. I said, what did you smell? He said, I smelt something that was powerful enough to knock a buzzard off the sideboard of a manure spreader. I said, well, that's pretty strong. That was descriptive. What did you do next? He said, well, I put my hand on the door of the trailer. I said, and then what did you do? See, he's given us firsthand experience, what he did and what he felt and saw and heard. And I said, I want to cover all the senses. Did you hear anything? Yeah, I heard the strangest noise when I put my hand on the door and I jiggled a little bit. I said, what did it sound like? He said it sounded like a very faint, constant rattling or a buzzing, but it wasn't a buzzing. It was just a movement, a shuffling. I can't describe it, but I heard it. I said, okay. So you saw all the trash piled up around the windows of this trailer. Yeah. And then I'm recapping for the judge, see, or the jury. You saw it, and then you smelt this overwhelming putrid aroma that would have knocked a buzzard off the sideboard of a manure wagon, a spreader. He said, yeah. I said, and you heard this weird kind of shuffling, rattling kind of noise when you put your hand in and started to jiggle a little bit. He said, yeah. I said, what'd you do next? He said, I opened the door. It opens outward from a trailer. Okay. What did you see? When he described what he saw inside the trailer where this woman was living. Wasn't a pretty sight. It was utter devastation. I said, what'd you do next? He said, I stepped up onto the step and stepped in across the threshold of the door of the trailer. Wow. What did you feel? He said, oh boy. He said, I felt a whole lot of something fall down on the back of my neck and down in my shirt. And it kind of filled up the bottom of my shirt where it was tucked in my breeches, and it was moving like it was alive. I said, what was it? He said, I opened my button of my shirt and I looked, and there was a pile of cockroaches had fallen down in my collar. I said, what'd it feel like? Oh, he said it felt sickening. I said, did you feel it in your guts? He said, yeah, it made me feel wheezy. I'd never had an examination cross or direct that was that vivid. The case didn't amount to that much, but I had fun trying to show the judge how this guy felt. You say, did they win the case? I don't remember. I don't even remember. The gal was a nice gal, really, and she was trying to try the case herself, just to talk to her, and she wasn't vindictive or hateful. She just lived like an animal and was tearing the place up and ruining the abode. That's what she was doing. Well, that's all God's business, friends. That's all God's business. And God, the Father, has delegated all authority, all. That means all it can mean in the skies and on the land to his Son, Jesus the Christ. He has given us directions by the laws of nature. That's our common law. Our Constitution of the United States, that's what we observe, the way things are, and they're not going to change. Our Constitution of the United States is a brief of common law government. It's a very important slice of our common law tradition. Okay, Miss Francine, we're going to do a 116. Yeah, 116, you'd told me. What else may Congress do besides have bankruptcy jurisdiction? Now, yesterday, if you weren't here, you missed it. We're talking about bankruptcy jurisdiction as a federal jurisdiction. What else may Congress do? Answer. It may coin money. That is, it may mark or stamp certain pieces of metal in a way which shall make them pass in buying and selling at a set value. It may also fix what shall be the value of coin that has been marked or stamped in any other country. Like you Canadians, you used to have, I assume you still do. I was up there at a fellow wanted to go on a long fishing trip up into Canada. We went up to International Falls, Minnesota. Those of you who don't know where that is, that's on the Canadian border, and it's right near Frostbite Falls, where Bullwinkle and Rocky used to hang out. I mean, it's up in that part of the world where they got 1,000 lakes, and those 1,000 lakes are moving water, just like, and on up into Canada. So, more than 1,000. That'd be 1,000,000 just south of Hudson Bay. We went up in there and we rented a car. We'd flown into Minnesota at the airport there, and got a car. We started driving north. We got to International Falls, and back in those days, they just said, where are you fellows going? The Canadian Border Patrol, we're going fishing. Oh, he said, I'd like to go fishing too. Just wanted to know where you were going. That's the way it used to be, and you just drive through, see, have to show any ID or anything. We drove through, and we drove a long way. We stopped at Horton's. Is it Tommy Horton? Vigilator, Tommy Horton. That's a place where you can get coffee and stuff like that. And that's when I found out that you have what they call a loonie and a toonie. A loonie, that's a $1 coin, and a toonie, that's a $2 coin. And they used to call them toonies. I assume they still do, loonies and toonies. And I got to figuring out how to pay for things. Not that much different, but a little bit. I mean, they use the dollar. They call it a dollar like we do. We got on up there a ways. We drove so far up toward Hudson Bay that we came to the end of the hard road. We couldn't drive any further. And we met a fellow there that had a boat. We got on the boat, and we went a long way on a boat. I don't know how far, but I remember seeing moose and Indian encampments and stuff like that all up through there. And then we got up there, bald eagles were so thick, they were like flies. I didn't realize how nasty critters they were. They're like buzzards. They're nothing but low down. They don't look as nasty, but that's what they are. They're just like buzzards. They'll eat anything. We caught so many. All you had to do was throw your line in the water, and you'd catch walleye and all sorts of fish. More than we knew what to do with. We'd take them, cut them up, throw the guts out, and the buzzards, not the buzzards, well, they were the bald eagles. They'd be sitting around like blowflies in the trees waiting for us to throw the guts and the heads out. And then we fed them. We enjoyed doing that after we cleaned the fish. Boy, did we eat good. We ate fish for a couple of weeks up there. That's all, 3 times a day. That's all we had. It was good. Oh, I learned a lot. Learned a lot about Canada. I remember I took a boat, and these lakes are all connected, and it's the Canadian Shield, so there's not much topsoil up there. It's just all that sheer granite. And the water would flow over that granite into another lake, and I got to one place where that was happening, and I got out the boat and walked up in the woods a little ways. Once you got in the woods, the skeeters were so thick, they would cover your hand. I finally went back, got a net and wore gloves, and they'd eat you alive. You'd be dead. You'd be laying, probably they would have left me laying there with all blood sucked out of my body. And I'd have been flatter than a flitter on the ground there, just completely defluided. No blood. It's how those Indian tribes live up there, I have no idea. Well, I saw this big sign. Now, we're in the wilderness. I mean, the howling wilderness. And I got out of the boat, and there's a great big sign in the brush right there. Said, "This land belongs to the Crown of England. Stay out." That's what it said. I said, holy mackerel. How many billions of acres does she own? Yeah, Queen Lizzie was in back then. Well, when they talk about the Great Dominion and the natural resources of the Great Dominion will never be exhausted, I almost believe it. That's a vast country. And not many people live there. Well, talked about bankruptcy. We said that's biblical. Justice Joseph's story of the U.S. Supreme Court said the same thing. That's biblical. You can only take bankruptcy under our laws, under the Constitution. The federal courts have bankruptcy jurisdiction. The state courts have none. If they did, we wouldn't be able to have any commerce in America because each state would set up bankruptcy courts. And bankruptcy is the power to set aside obligations of contract. And they would eventually, and each state would say, well, all the people in our state, if you're owed money from those people from other states, go Pakistanly, that would shut the whole blasted country down. So our federal courts have bankruptcy jurisdiction, and bankruptcy, by our laws here in the United States, a fellow can take it only once every 7 years. The year of Jubilee I started talking about last time, once every 7 times 7 years. It's on a 7-year cycle by multiples. That's every 49 years. Again, for those of you that went to the public school system, you might not have learned your multiplication tables. But 7 sevens are 49. I used to know mine pretty good. I think I still do up to 12 times 12. I wasn't no slouch. I learned my multiplication tables. I don't want you to think that I'm not an educated fellow. And there are a few people, apparently, they tell me that they don't teach the multiplication tables anymore. I watched my dad, he could figure stuff, see his mouth moving as he did his figure. And he'd say, okay, it's 12 foot wide and 12 foot long, calculating his head how many sacks of fertilizer. That was back when you used to have to take fertilizer by the sack. See, now they tell me they just bring it in bulk and pump it over. But back then, we'd throw 50-pound bags of fertilizer, and we'd throw them all day long. 50-pound bags of feed, 50-pound bags of fertilizer. Of course, salt and mineral blocks would come in a block that weighed 50 pounds, but it wasn't in so the cattle could lick it, We had an old tractor tire nailed to the side of the hammer mill house. And that tractor tire must have been old because I know it from a tractor from the 1930s. I could tell by the design of the tread. And then we cut the bottom out of it, so you put the salt block in there. That way the rain wouldn't rain on it, but had a hole in the bottom and the cattle could lick the salt block from the side. That's just a little bit of a side note, a little bit of free information to help you with your salt blocks in case you got a few head of cattle. You set your salt block out in the open, and rain will wash it away, and you'll waste your salt. A lot of guys do that. Well, we had it figured out different. I need to do some more of that around here. Put the salt block in an old tire of some kind and cut a hole out of the bottom, and the water comes down and it doesn't drain, see, into the tire if it's hung up on a tree or on the side of a building. I learned a lot of tricks that doing that kind of stuff when I was a kid. A lot of tricks that come in handy, but most people don't think that, most people don't have cattle anyway. Well, anyway, this bankruptcy is setting aside obligation of contract. And I also said last time that one of the main reasons we went to war with England was because they set aside their obligation of contract with the colonies here in America. They'd given them charters that granted certain amounts of land. And then they took that land. We fought the French and Indian War. Oh, they came and they ran it, but Americans spilt their blood and spent their money. And as it says in the Declaration of 76, the Indian tribes were merciless, not distinguishing between sex, age, or condition of infirmity. No, they just murdered everybody. And they'd come in the winter time at the behest of the Jesuit priest in Quebec, liquored up with free whiskey, provided with ammunition, and they would murder the English-speaking settlers. And in the wintertime, they'd do it because they liked to see the red blood on the snow. It was ugly friends. And so we said, we keep benefiting from this war, so you're going to pay for it. And then they, of course, passed the Stamp Act and other acts of taxation. That all came back to one thing, friends. One thing, the Quebec Act. It says in the Declaration of 76, this is the violation of contract, Declaration of 76, that they have established a jurisdiction with a foreign law with the intent of extending that foreign law into these colonies. Well, what are they talking about? They're talking about Quebec. See, they whooped the French, and that forever threw France out of North America. Remember, France got here early. See, where I'm from, a lot of the towns and a lot of the creeks and rivers have French names. Where I'm from, where I grew up. Why? Because the French trappers got there first. That's why. And they've always felt like, just like the Mexicans say, well, all that Southwest America, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, that all belongs to us originally, and you fellas stole it from us. We want it back. That's what they're saying. Well, the French were the same way. They said, you stole that. Well, we didn't steal it. Listen, when you can't settle things in court, when you can't settle a matter through the process of due process or common law, when you can't settle it in trial or battle by trial before the jury, and people are still wanting to fight about it, the only option they have is to go to battle. It's always been that way, and it will always be that way until the Messiah, Jesus Christ himself, returns, and he commands us, my friends, listen, he commands us to be ready for that. He commands us to be ready for that. That's why we have the Second Amendment. That's not an option, friends. A right, the old Anglo-Saxon word right, means duty. We're to be ready. Jesus Christ is our lawgiver. He has given us 2 volumes. I've said it a million times. It bears repeating. He has given us the laws of nature that we can observe the way things are, the relationships between matter, things and things, things and men and men, between animals, and between men and animals, and we observe the laws that govern physics. And we live by that. The seasons, the growing seasons, the rhythms of the breeding of livestock, the laws that God has set, and they don't change, my friends. You cannot. I heard about a guy one time wanted to put a bill in the state legislature. He said, we need to put a bill in the state legislature to change planting season to the fall instead of the spring, and then put harvest in the spring, and all we got to do is pass a bill, and that will help us with the education of our children. Right now, our children, we're letting them out of school, and this is the way it was at home. They let us out of school in May so that we could be around and help our parents put in the crop. That's the whole idea, letting people out in the summertime. Then harvest would occur in the fall, and we'd be put out the crop, cultivate the crop. We'd be at home working like Hebrew slaves. Our fathers were taskmasters. We want to get the planting done so bad. I want to go to town. And my goal was, I work fast. I want to get the planting done. Whatever Dad told me to do. We were tilling the ground, plowing the stalks. He was planting, because I wanted to go to town on the 4th of July, see? And if we got done, because we'd work up into the night and get up early in the morning, do the feeding, feed the cattle and the hogs, and then we'd go to the field, and then 4th of July would come. I wanted to go to town because they had the fireworks, and all my friends would be there. Oh, they had a lot of stuff going on. Of course, a lot of girls there, see? And there were times when that happened. You say, you mean you were planting way up? Well, sometimes we're dependent upon the weather, but we wanted to get done by middle of June, of course, or even earlier if we could. But that didn't happen. Oh, by the way, see, the people made fun of my father. They made fun of him all his life for not working on Sunday. and they'd all be working on Sunday, and all they wanted to do was get their planting done, and then run to the coffee shop in town, sit around with the other farmers and say, well, I got my crop in, and they'd race to try to be the first ones to get their crop in. And all those fellows that used to do that, you know what happened to them? The ones I remember, they went under. My father, they'd make fun of Dad saying, you're not going to make it, not working on Sundays. My dad wouldn't work on midnight, Saturday night. We shut the tractors down. I don't care what we were doing. He'd go apoplectic, not if he thought he had to work on Sunday. What a guy. Conviction. They all went down. And his idea was this, listen to me. God works things in mysterious ways. He said, look, I'm not in a hurry to get my crop in. And he said, if you'll watch, the fellows that get their crop in first get all the diseases and all the bugs. And then I get mine in a little later, and I don't get that. I'm not in a hurry. I don't want them to get diseases and bugs, but I just notice they're getting diseases and bugs. And a lot of times when they get them in too early, they get drowned out with the spring rain. The crops wouldn't come up. The crust would form on and the corn plants couldn't pop through the crust. They had to replant, and it cost them double. Had to pay money to replant, had to pay for fuel, had to pay for more seed. On and on the madness went. People competing for nothing, for stupidity. I watched it. They had to have all the best equipment and the best tractors, and talking about bankruptcy, talking about what England did, talking about the French and Indian War, as we call it. And that war was ended on the Plains of Abraham. That's a place outside of a fort up on the border of Canada. And the name of that place, some of you know it. It's a French word. Like I was saying, I grew up in that kind of a world where a lot of French words near a place called Terre Haute, Indiana. Terre Haute. The French had occupied that area. Vincennes, St. Louis, all that area. French names. I grew up on a river called we called it the Ambral. We anglicized it, but it was spelled Embarrass, embarrass. And I had a buddy who grew up on a creek called the Bon Paul. That's French for good. I think it means good path. Miss Francine, if you know, is that right? Bon Paul would be good path. I think bon means good, like Bonhomme Richard, good man Richard. Mm-hmm. Bon, okay, Bonhomme Richard. Bon paw would be good paw. And paw, I think, is a word that's related to foot, isn't it? Or treading or path, something like that.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. And I'm probably not pronouncing it right so that you would be able to recognize what it is. But now the word Wabash is not a French word. The Wabash is a Indian tribal word that means white. Habasha, Kickapoo Indians. And then, of course, there's places like St. Louis. I told you about that. You've heard of St. Louis. And then Champaign-Urbana, or Champagne, that's a French word. Prairie, the prairies of Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Iowa, that's a French word. See, the French brought all that in. They said we want all that back. And so after we whooped the French at the Plains of Abraham, called by historians of the event the most decisive battle. Listen to this. The most decisive battle in the history of the world, and certainly in the history of North America, on the Plains of Abraham. Why do they call it that? Montreal. That was at Montreal. There's a plain right below. Oh, here's the camera. A plain right below Montreal, and that's where the battle was fought. And the French did not expect the English-speaking forces to do what had to be done to get there. Well, they did get there, and they whooped them. And that forever ended the possibility of the French tongue dominating North America. the French religion, which is Romanism, dominating North America, the French culture from dominating North America, and all of Canada and all of the colonies then were solidly in the hands of England. And that means the common law then went into the Northwest Territories. See, then Parliament got to feeling, this is the way parliaments and governments do, and Congresses, legislative bodies, they got to feeling bad, and the people up in Quebec saying, well, that ain't right that you did that to us, and we want all that land back, and now that we're part of England, if you just give us that land back that we had. And so Parliament did. They gave them all of what is today Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. They gave that to Quebec, the French-speaking colony, along with the giving them the canon civil laws of Rome, the Code of Justinian. And that's why our Declaration of 76 says you have established a strange law, a foreign law, in a neighboring province, namely Quebec, with the intent of extending that foreign law into these colonies. And we went to war over that. See, it all came back to what happened on the Plains of Abraham, the French and Indian War, and that wound. They just kept opening the wound, and the colonists said, no, that's enough. And yet now you've taken that land that our charters give to us and give it back to the French, the French-speaking people at that time. They were under the Code Napoleon, the canon civil laws of Rome. And if we had not pushed back, and that's why I said the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, the governance of all that land was to take it back and ensure that the common law tradition prevailed in the Northwest Territories. Because those were previously most of the Northwest Territories. The greatest chunk was part of the colony of Virginia. Virginia extended west from its northern and southern boundaries as far as land went. Well, so we have this document talking about bankruptcy. It says Congress may coin money. It may mark or stamp certain pieces of metal, coining money, and setting the value thereof. Setting the value, our Constitution of the United States says that. Congress has authority to set the value, to set what monetary standards we have and fix them so they won't change. Did they do that? Yeah, they did that. You can go look it up. It's easy to look up. A dollar is equal to so many ounces and a certain weight of silver. Do we pay any attention to that now? No, we pay no attention at all. What did we foolishly do? What did we unlawfully do? What did we unconstitutionally do? We turned all that over to a private bank called the Federal Reserve Bank, which essentially is an arm of the Bank of London, which is like the Federal Reserve Bank, and they were foolish enough to do that back in, I believe it was the year 1692, after the enthronement of William and Mary, the Dutch Protestants that were made king and queen of England. We liked them all in all respects. We liked them. Well, like I say, we mourned their death by our judges in our common law courts donning black robes. That happened in England and it happened in America. But then after the time of mourning was over, England went back to the colorful robes they'd had before. In America, we never did. We're still mourning, as Fratcher used to say, we're still mourning the death of William and Mary. I've talked to judges. Why do you guys wear these ugly, depressing-looking black robes? They don't have a clue. See, we keep doing things, and we forget why we do them. We forget our past. We don't care. We're just busy trying to make a living and scratch out a living and get a retirement and forget about why. Why is important. To understand from whence we have come, because if we do not understand from whence we have come, that set the trajectory as a line from where we came from to where we are now. And if we know and we can trace that line, all we have to do is extend it out this way, and we know where we're going to end up. It may not be good. We better be figuring that out. Or maybe we came this far and then we veered off course and we went this way. Whatever the case, maybe we need to get back to this line and continue straight. That's what's happening now. The Federal Reserve Bank has taken over dictating the value of money. How do they do it? They change it. They change it. You can't plan for the future. You save money, and then by the time you've saved $100, $1,000 in the bank, it's worth less than it was yesterday, or last year, or 10 years. When I was a boy, of course, some of you remember, a candy bar was a nickel. Payday, Three Musketeers, Bit of Honey. Oh, I like that one. Here's another one. I think it's called Butternut. That was a peanut butter chocolate thing. A nickel. Put a nickel in that, pull the little lever. It wasn't electronic. You'd pull the lever and down drop a candy bar. Put a dime in the Coke machine, get a bottle of Coca-Cola or Pepsi or 7-Up. That's pretty much all I remember. There was Orange Crush and Verner's. Did you ever drink Verner's? Verner's is still out there. I think it's just not very many places. I know it was in Arizona. I used to live in Prescott, Arizona. We were in the mining business, or near there. You could get Verner's. Funny thing about Verner's, soda pop. When you pop the top of Verner's, or pop the lid off the glass bottle, and you bring it up to drink it, some kind of gas goes up your nose and makes you, kind of wakes you up. I don't know what's in Verner's. They used to do that, but those were a dime. I remember when I got ready to get out of high school down at Bryant Chevy Olds, little tiny town. We had an Oldsmobile dealership. We had a Ford dealership right downtown. At grocery stores, but at any rate, I remember brand new Chevy Impala, $2,200. $2,200. A comparable car now would cost you $22,000. Why? Because the dollar's not worth what it was before. You can't plan for the future. That's why a lot of people are saying you're better to store your money in gold and silver. At least you know what you got. The value of gold and silver never changes. It's not manipulatable. The value of money is manipulatable. So if somebody says, well, gold was worth $1,500, now it's worth almost $3,000, and that's true. Did the price of gold change? Or the value, rather? The price changed, but the worth of gold is still the same. It never changes. That's why, of course, people have written books and said, and I don't disagree with them, the medium of exchange that God has authorized is gold and silver, precious metals. They'll always buy. You say, what do you mean they hold the value? An ounce of gold has always, for thousands of years, will always buy the same thing in material goods. It will always do that, no matter what the value of it is otherwise. Because the value, the true wealth is not attached to the dollar. Even though they want it to be, they want to manipulate it. It's a fantasy. It's a facade. As is said, and rightly said, during the days of the Roman Empire, an ounce of gold would buy you a high-quality toga, a belt, a pair of sandals. You'd be dressed up to the nines with 1 ounce of gold. And 1 ounce of gold, regardless of what the dollar value put on it, 1 ounce of gold will still buy you a nice suit of clothes, a nice pair of shoes. See, the value of the metal doesn't change. Why? Because it's ordained of God. And when you go to the Bible, you see that every time. Listen, every time in the Old Testament that you see the word money in the King James Bible or the other translations, it's not the Hebrew word for money. It's always the Hebrew word kisef, which is the word for silver. And the Winterized version, I always translate it that way so that people will know this isn't talking about money. Money is something that men produce. It's an idea that they want to control, see, the value of. And that's what the Federal Reserve Bank does. By printing more money or putting more money in the computers, it waters down the overall value, and the dollar is worth less, will buy less. It's almost ungraspable, uncanny, as the Scotsman says, uncanny. How much money? During Obama and Biden, they were printing, just having ball. They were printing money like, well, I was going to say like sailors spend money. But as one sailor said, that's offensive to say, because when I was a drunk sailor, when I ran out of money, that was the end of it. I didn't have anything else to spend. These guys run out of money. The Federal Reserve Bank, they just keep printing it. They don't care. By the trillions, and giving it away. Talking about all the things that have happened. Rick Jor, we interviewed him. And I know where Rick lives, and he's up grizzly bears and grizzly cubs play in his backyard. And he lives that far up in the mountains. And I was going to his house one time years ago, and I remember seeing a sign says Kicking Horse Job Corps, something like that. Kicking Horse. This is in the Flathead Valley, where the Flathead Indian tribe is. I thought that's kind of odd, and it stuck in my head because it was a landmark. I knew where to turn. See, when I first went up to see Rick, I on the internet just happened to notice this. It was an article about Kicking Horse, whatever it was, a Job Corps. Well, this is a federal program. And it was saying they were shutting it down. And I got to read more, and it said that there were 46 people on the payroll of Kicking Horse Job Corps. That's a federally funded organization. 46 folk on full salary, and they hadn't been operating that thing since 2017. It's been 8 years. 46 people have been on the payroll on full salary, doing nothing, just getting a check in the mail. You multiply that by 1 million. We're just giving away money. It can't last, because the more that money you give away, the more you have to print, and the more you print, the less the dollar is worth, till it gets to, like it did in Germany before World War II, a wheelbarrow full of German marks wouldn't buy you a loaf of bread. Inflation. They just printed so much of it, just having fun, just print money. Oh, people need more money? Let's just put more in circulation and everybody will have more money. God doesn't give men that option without destruction, and destruction came. Our money has to be backed, to be truly an exchange, has to be backed by something of real value, land, houses. Oh, they'll tell you, we loan it into existence. Every time we loan people money for something of real value, then we put that on the books, and that's what backs the dollar. They're not paying any attention, folks. They're just printing money, no matter what they say backs it. Oh, and they say, of course, it's debt-based. What does that mean? That means that the money in the Federal Reserve Bank, this is their theory, the money in the Federal Reserve Bank truly does have the backing of real wealth every time you borrow money to buy a car or a house. And if nobody borrows money to get a car or a house, there's nothing backing the money that they print. That's the danger. In other words, in order for the economy to thrive under that system, people have to be borrowing money all the time. That's the way wealth is put on the books of the Federal Reserve Bank. That's a bad policy, friends, to make everybody in debt in order to support the economy. That's what Ron Paul's been saying for years. It's evil, friends, beyond evil. Evil beyond evil. Isn't it funny? That's the one thing that folk don't want to touch. They'll talk about cutting everything, but nobody's talking about, we just got to get rid of the Federal Reserve Bank. They're being very politic about it. So Congress may coin money and fix the value. And The Federal Reserve Bank is doing that. This is unconstitutional, and that's why we have depressions and downfalls and crises like the banking debacle of 2008. And the banks say, well, we're too big to, not only are we too big to fail, we're too big to jail. You can't jail us. And Congress believes them. And Congress is afraid of them. And our income tax system is based upon the bank. If they don't pull money out of the system through income tax, get it off the books, then the inflation just keeps growing as they keep printing money. The income tax is the pop valve on the boiler. If there is no pop valve on the boiler will blow up and destroy their wonderful money-making machine. But that's brutal. It's all so brutal, all so ugly. Everybody's supposed to be in debt to keep the economy going, borrow money from the bank, and then pay lots of income tax so the system won't blow up. Oh boy, you see, keep printing money, it just starts swelling like a boiler. And then income tax, it's no accident that the income tax legislation of 1913 occurred the same year, the same time almost, as the Federal Reserve legislation, 1913. They go together, bread and butter, hand and glove, chicken and dumplings. The one can't continue without the other. The one can't continue without the other. Well, may any person who pleases coin money? Answer, no. Only those employed to do so by Congress. They work at a place called the Mint. Now, I don't understand why he says this. If I understand his words correctly, this is not true. Anybody can coin money. People do it in America now. There are people, I know people that mint money. I know people in Canada that do that. I've been to places like Edmonton and been to refineries. I knew a fellow that had one up there where he would refine gold. He had 55-gallon drums full of black sand. He got up to Whitehorse or Yellowknife or someplace up there, and had gold ore in it, and he would smelt it, had a smelter going, had a guy working for him. You can print money or coin money in America, not print it. You can coin money in America, call it what you want. You can make coins, let's just put it that way. You can make coins in America as long as it doesn't look like, as long as you're not trying to counterfeit the current coin of the United States. I quoted the Constitution there. Your counterfeiting is trying to pass off what you do as the current coin of the United States. Doesn't mean you can't make a gold bar or a gold coin, but be careful. If it even can be said to anyway look like or be thought to be the current coin of the United States, they're going to send you to prison for counterfeiting. There are only 4 crimes our Constitution mentions: counterfeiting the current coin and securities of the United States, violations of international law, piracies and felonies committed on the high seas, and last but not least, treason against the United States, not against your state. Every state is sovereign. Every state, treason, therefore, can be committed against your state. Talking a while ago about partnerships, loyalty. That's what treason is. Treason's disloyalty, not loyalty. Lack of loyalty. Partnership, and in the earlier days in America, when there were more men than women, partnership, I mean, to say that man's my partner was no small matter. What did that mean? That meant in our common law thinking, and people understood this, I'm loyal to him no matter what. And he's loyal to me. If something happens to me, he'll see to it that I'm taken care of and tended to. And if something happens to him, I have a fiduciary duty, not a contractual duty, but it's a contractual duty where I look out more for him than me. And if I look out for me, the only reason I'm looking out for me is for his benefit. It's like husband and wife. Why do I look out for my own safety? Why do I make sure that I'm fed and healthy? Why do I do that? For the sake of my wife and my children, not for my sake. See, that's a different way of thinking, and you need to think that way. We all need to be reminded to think that way. And if we are in a place where we have a partner, he's dependent on me and I'm dependent on him, I have a duty to not take chances I don't have to take. I don't climb grain bins anymore. No. I don't ride on the fender of a tractor anymore. No. I don't drive as fast as I used to. No, I don't do that anymore. My life is slower. I'm more calculated. I'm more deliberate. I'm wiser than I was. 2 reasons. Number one, other people are depending on me. And number two, I've just learned that my body can't do what it used to do. I'm not as sharp as I used to be. When it comes to reacting to danger, look at your life that way. There are people that want you around. I know some of you don't think that. There are people that may not want you around, but they need you around. You just need to be alive and be there. Your influence is greater than you think. Use it. I hope it's for good, not evil. But the more you get the laws of nature, and the laws of nature's God in your mental sod, the more valuable you'll be to others. If any other person shall coin money in his own name, or shall stamp it so as to resemble that coined at the mint. Now here, see, we're getting to counterfeiting. Or that which, though coined in other countries, is allowed to pass as money in the United States, called current coin, may he be punished? And the answer is yes. That's the crime of counterfeiting. It may be punished in any manner Congress shall appoint. Remember, counterfeiting is one of the only 4 crimes. Hear that kid outside?
Is that a 4-legged or a 2-legged kid?
That's a 4-legged. That's a 4-legged kid.
Okay. Okay.
What are you screaming about? I don't.
He needs his mama.
Oh, she's out there. Oh, children, kids, they'll whine about all sorts of things. You never know what's bugging him. Maybe he's got a pain in his foot. I don't know. We'll have to check after a while. Yeah. If any other person shall coin money, as it says. Now, can you coin money? Yes, but you can't coin money in America under the Constitution in a way that could be, in a way with intent, that it would be passed off as the current is important coin of the United States. This is history. In Northern California, the current coin of the United States didn't hardly exist at all until after World War I, during and after. In other words, all business was done. The medium of exchange in Northern California was gold, because the gold mines were chugging and plugging and working and pumping out gold, and people were putting it in bars and putting it in coins. And they were using it as a medium of exchange. Oh, you can do that today. During the days of Roosevelt, he tried to stop it. What we call gold contracts, gold clauses in contracts, where you say, well, I want to buy a house, and I'll pay you half of it in gold and half in dollars. And you contract for it. People used to do that a lot. You can still do that. Roosevelt tried to stop it. But it's back to we're off the gold standard. You can do that. Well, we're off. Yeah, really, that's bad. But gold is a commodity like grain, like pork bellies. Silver is too. And if you want to use it to trade for something else, there's no law in the United States presently that says you can't do that. Or transport it or whatever you want to do. Suppose they counterfeit not the money of the United States, but the stock issued by the government. Stock issued by the government. Remember, our Constitution of the United States says if you counterfeit the current coin or securities of the United States. That's counterfeiting. Well, that's what he's talking about here when he talks about stock certificates. Those are called securities. That's just the name. I don't think it's a good name. I don't think it describes what they are, but that's what our law has called those things. And so you can be punished the same as if you had counterfeited money. A bond, a U.S. bond, is not a medium of exchange, but it's a debt instrument that says that we will pay you this or that. Well, if you counterfeit those, that's called counterfeiting, and that's a crime under our Constitution. Well, we're going to get to post offices next. This is Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com. Commonlawyer.com